HO Talk Show. Back like we never left. It's Charles.
It's Max.
Yep, still here, still standing, Miss Max. I am HO Talk Show, y'all. I think that break was long enough for him, Max, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so you should have the popcorn ready. And the family should be around the fireplace, so you should be riding in the car right now with the radio up.
That's right.
Windows up, AC on, because the hits keep coming, and we are joined right now with our friend Sally Hudson joining us once again. Sally, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Yeah, anytime. Always welcome. And so, when we talked to you last, I believe we were pre-primary, and we were talking about the city of Charlottesville's initiation into ranked choice voting. All right. That election surprised some people. I even heard some conversation around if ranked choice voting played an unfair advantage. And I think that was due to, based on some feedback that I've gotten, there was a everybody knows by Jen Fleischer getting the highest percentage of number one votes. That surprised some people. And so I think just because some folks were surprised, and again, like that could have been based on the voter turnout, and maybe you have some of that data. But I think just because of the surprise of it, being a newcomer, having some folks who seem to be pretty solid, pretty supported, it just makes folks question it. And I know when you explain it, it sounds foolproof, Sally, but how change is hard, right? Change is difficult. So of course it gets questioned, but I want to take it back to that, to sort of the primary phase. And I guess initially sort of like how it was accepted, like how it was rolled out for Charlottesville's first time to having a ranked choice, a vote election.
Yeah. So big picture, this was our first time using ranked choice voting for a city council race. It was just in the June primary, just for the Democratic Party. There were three candidates running, Jen Fleischer, as you mentioned, and then also Mr. Juan Diego Wade and Mr. Brian Pinkston. And there are three folks running for two seats, and two people won. Jen Fleischer got about half the votes, and Juan Diego Wade got about a third of the votes, and then Mr. Pinkston got the rest. And I guess some people were surprised by that because there were two incumbents and one newcomer. From that, I would say let's look back at recent city council elections, and I would say that's the general trend among Charlottesville city voters. It is generally newcomers come out on top.
Yeah, one-term
mayors. If you look back at the election in 2021, that race elected Natalie Oshrin and Michael Payne and Lloyd Snook, but Natalie got the most votes. And she was the newcomer. She was the woman in the race. People were surprised when Sina McGill came in first in her race when she ran for city council in 2019. First timer, she was a woman. So I think we got to stop being surprised when women win races is how I actually feel about that.
What it is?
I mean, people were surprised when I ran for the first time and I won 2/3 of the vote in the city. And they were like, well, what happened there? I mean, in my last race in 2023, I was running against a very senior incumbent. I got 60% of the vote in the city. So I think we got to stop being surprised when Charlottesville voters choose new people. I think we got to stop being surprised when they choose women.
That's a great point. But that leads me to ask, though, what is it about Charlottesville, though, to where we're not seeing more longevity, from your opinion?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I do think there are plenty of folks in the city who wonder whether city council is being responsive to their needs. I don't think that that's hard to understand. I mean, I also think if we think back to the last election cycle for council, when those candidates were on the ballot in 2021, that was a time when it was pretty hard to get anybody to run for city council. I mean, if you were out there trying to tell somebody you should run, they'd say, are you crazy? I want to run into that meat grinder. And I think that has changed. I think that at that time, I mean, we were losing a city manager every 6 months, right? We had something like five city managers in 4 years. And I think to their great credit, Juan and Brian have helped stabilize the council, have helped hire a city manager who has stayed in the trenches and has started to get City Hall in a place where we've got more stable people in staff, and they're taking on projects and they're starting to knock them down. And so I think that what I heard from a lot of voters, which was a very different sentiment than in 2021, is they started to believe that City Hall could do things again. And so they wanted people in those seats who they thought might put their foot on the gas a little bit and say, now I want them to do more. I want them to do it better or faster.
So if we're seeing a trend in the most recent primaries compared to the past two, at least locally, what then are we saying is maybe the advantage of having ranked choice voting, if nothing, if it's the outcome is technically the same?
Though this is great. So we talked about this last time about how this June primary was a pilot, because a lot of people, when you talk about ranked choice voting, they think, man, that sounds complicated. Nobody will understand it. Do we even have the equipment that can do it? All of that. And so the first time you do it, you just have to get those concerns out of the way. Like, can the staff even do it? The real power of ranked choice voting will come if we can use it in a general election. Because I think right now, the range of people who we see run and who we see win is still very constrained by the fact that our local politics is dominated by a primary stage. And I know plenty of people of all political stripes who don't personally identify with the capital D Democratic Party. Both folks who are more conservative, more progressive, more anything, don't feel like that is a place for them. And so in order to really see the benefits, you have to take it into a general election. And I think where we see that is if we look a little further down the road at Arlington County, which has been using ranked choice for 3 years now. They have a ranked choice race for their county board seat up right now, and there are 5 candidates running. There's a Democrat, there's a Republican, and there are 3 independents. And those benefits really start to open up when you move it into a general election. So I should think
more consistency.
Say more.
Have they seen more consistency when it comes to folks who are reelected, right? Like, or have they seen that same turnover of someone new each term?
Great question. Yeah. This is the first time that they have had an incumbent run for reelection during ranked choice.
Okay.
So the first cycle that they did it was an open seat and 2 women won. The second cycle that they had seen it again, it was an open seat, again, a newcomer won. So this is the first time that had an incumbent run for reelection. The current board chair is running for reelection, and so we'll see whether he keeps his seat.
Got you. You know, I can't help but think too, though, because as you said, so it's even bigger than council. Like when it comes to the mindset of electing, new candidates instead of the incumbent, or at least the new candidate getting more votes. I guess is a better way of saying it, because as mentioned, seems like no one is really doing multiple terms over the past several years, right? It's like, so even beyond RCV. So but Charlottesville also being called the blue dot in the South, right? Like having a strong Democratic hold, in regards generally of who gets elected and who even runs for public office here in the city. So like, I can't help but think that it's more of a Democratic philosophy or like a Democratic mindset that maybe more of the issue. What I mean by that is that, like, what we're seeing on the conservative side, right, is that the loyalty is big. It's like, I don't even have to like you.
Yeah.
but we are loyal to this cause. And so I can't help but think that maybe that's what we're seeing in Charlottesville, is that maybe we're fragmented when it comes to our political philosophies. And if somebody kind of is bringing something a little different, a little flavor new to the table, they're like, oh, let's give that a shot.
Yeah.
And instead of sticking in for the long haul.
I think that's right. I mean, I do think that in general, big picture, if what it means to be conservative is to want to stick to something, and what it means to be progressive is to want to move forward new ideas, voices, then that general desire to have more perspectives in the mix probably is a more left-leaning thing.
Yeah. But would you say that is to our detriment? When I say our, right, like that's sort of the, like the general our of our detriment by then sometimes when there needs to be a plan maybe to overcome, like the competition or the opposition, so to speak, like within the political realm, if we're always looking for who's more progressive, like, isn't that to our detriment, politically speaking?
Well, I would be careful often in drawing parallels between our national politics at the presidential level and what's going on in the city, because I think that, at this point, the city is a blue dot. And so even describing everybody as a Democrat, there's a whole lot of different stripes of people inside of that big blue tent. And so if we move up from there to the national level, I think sometimes those analogies fall apart a little. But I do think you're right that if we're looking at trying to field candidates at the national level that are going to win elections, they're going to have to build big tents across a wider people. And if so, if you hold people to purity tests along any dimension, you might have a harder time engaging that coalition.
Good point. We are talking to Sally Hudson about ranked choice voting, amongst other things. And as we said, it was sort of a pilot for Charlottesville in the June primary this year, and we're not far from our general election. So one thing I know from business, like a pilot is just that, like it's a trial, it's a test run. So what did we learn? Like, were there things that we should have done differently, or that we will do differently in the general election, or it is what it is?
So ranked choice is over for the general election because there's nobody else on the ballot. And I think that speaks to our current politics. Nobody besides the Democrats filed to run. So the two candidates who won that Democratic primary, they're the only folks who are even in the mix for the general. We don't have any independents or Republicans on the ballot. So that means that there was no general election to build toward this year. The next steps for us as a community, as we weigh what to do with this ranked choice question, is to come back to, do we want to do it again? And if so, do we want to do it at the primary level or also at the general level? And so I think where we're at now, when we go into next year with these new counselors, we'll have Ms. Fleischer and Mr. Wade on the council, is to come to them and say, how can we make that decision in the most inclusive and robust way possible? Because the first decision to use it in the Democratic primary was largely a party process, right? Like, it's their party, it's their primary, they get to decide how they want to do it. But if we take it to a general election, that is all voters, it's all residents, and everybody's voice needs to have a role in that. And so from my perspective, I would really love to see our community go through a more formal charter review process like we have done in past eras in our city and also in cities across the country, where we take a look at the city's election laws from the top down and say, is there a role for this new tool in our elections? If so, how? And does it need to be combined with anything else? Like, do we need to, if ranked choice is only part of the puzzle, are there other things that we can do to make our elections more inclusive? I mean, I think there's a lot that we should be talking about on the money side of politics, if what we're really saying is we want to make it possible for people to serve on city council who come from a lot of perspectives, because it costs money to run and it doesn't pay much if you win. And that keeps a lot of people out.
And I think that brought clarity to me, because I wasn't aware of that. So I was thinking that ranked choice voting was something that was adopted, like more so by the city registrar, because we do have multiple candidates running for a school board, for instance. But you're saying that it's not like a citywide, it wasn't adopted citywide, it was just a pilot for council.
It was just a pilot, just for council and just for the primary. So this really was like, can we get the voting machines right? Like, can we get everybody used to it, the election officers and all that? And then because nobody else filed to run, there's no way to use it in the general. So you're right. We got school board on the ballot this fall. We got statewide offices, but there's no council, which means there's no more ranked choice.
And so the power lies entirely with city council in terms of whether or not we utilize ranked choice voting for other elections.
That's right.
Okay. I think looking at the voter turnout as it pertains to the ranked choice voting system made me pay closer attention to the actual turnout. Potentially the results could have looked differently if we had more voters participate in our local primaries. How do we change that? I think it was approximately somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 people voted. And we are a locality of approximately 50. What are your recommendations there?
Absolutely. So we're a city of 50,000 people. We got about 30,000 registered voters. So if only 6,000 people vote in the primary, that's like the 20% of the voters. And that's good by Virginia standards. You look at a lot of other local governments and they have way fewer people show up. That is partly because our general elections are so uncompetitive by design. If we have policies like ranked choice in the general that encourage more elections to be competitive at the general stage, then the decisive stage of the election, when more people are turning out to vote, the one that matters will happen in front of more people. And so I think something that I have noticed a lot over the course of running for office is that whether people turn out or not depends a lot on whether the candidates are engaged with them, whether they feel like it's a stakes election that matters and that there's vigorous campaigns. And so if we have competitive elections in the general election, then more people will be voting in those. But as long as everything is in a tiny little primary, then we should consistently expect fewer voters. I should say there was nothing unusual about the turnout in this primary. This primary had higher turnout than the one 4 years ago. So it's, pretty much in line with what you can expect from a city primary in the city.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I can't help but wonder too, because you've been on all sides of elections, right? Like literally, like you've probably worn every hat, So like, I'm curious through this process, like through your experience as, as a politician, as well as advocate for ranked choice voting, like where is your faith, or how big is your faith right now in our, like, like in our election system in general, right? And I kind of asked that realizing that you are also a professor at the university, and I see how generationally, people have different fights and they have different causes, and the way that they view sort of, our status quo system, right? Like it'll change generationally. So I'm just curious on your take right now, and seeing what we've seen, with all the talk about how maybe the last, federal election was rigged. And then you have some people say, well, I don't vote at all because it doesn't make a difference. Right. And then they'll use something like that as proof, like, see what I told you, if you got enough money, you're going to win, or, whatever the case, if you got enough friends in the right places.
Yeah.
So I'm curious of your perspective, maybe as Sally, I guess I can't even say Sally the citizen, because you got to use your experience to answer the question. But yeah, like, where does your faith lie right now? How strong is it in our, in our electoral system?
The reason that I am so passionate about election reform is because I've heard so many people tell me I don't bother to vote because my vote doesn't matter. The same people are going to win no matter what. And they're not wrong. What frustrates me, having been on the ballot as a candidate, is talking to those folks and knowing that their frustration came from a real place. I think we spend way too much money in politics trying to get out the vote, trying to nag people to vote, trying to nudge them to vote, and not enough time making their vote matter more. Because people make time for the things that actually matter to them. And I think it is right for a lot of folks to be frustrated and disengaged. And I think it is important we get down to the root causes of that problem, the policies that made people learn that their vote didn't matter. And so that's why I care about making more competitive elections.
I love it. Love that. I have a 15-year-old like that has some insight if you care to hear about it.
Hear it from the mouths of babes.
I was actually surprised. I was like, that makes a lot of sense, son. So he said he thinks that candidates should be anonymous, meaning that people should only know where the candidate stands.
It's interesting.
Like, because he already sees, like the bias based on the individual and not the issues.
I think I might have agreed with him 10 years ago. And I think public service changed my mind. And I'll tell you how. I used to be somebody who had a checklist for folks that I voted for. Like, they got to be good on this. They got to be good on that. I got the things that I believe in and I want to know where they stand. And then serving in office taught me that like 95% of the decisions that I made were about things that I never talked to anybody about on the campaign trail, because all sorts of stuff crosses your desk. And it was a very rare slice of my time that I spent on the handful of things that you could fit on a mailer. Like if you had a voter guide that said, here's where the candidates stand on these top 5 issues. And there were all sorts of decisions you make in public service that never even see the light of day, because they don't come down to a vote where you push the red button or the green button. It's like, how do you deal with a sticky situation between people, right? The messy personalities of it all. And so I personally, as a voter, became somebody who now, as I'm looking at people, I look much more for their character, for their wisdom, for their curiosity about the world, because I think those are the skills that are going to serve them well no matter what crosses their desk. Because I think we increasingly see that people are going to have to deal with some curveballs, whether it's federal budget cuts, whether it's pandemics, whether it's whatever. I want to know that that's somebody who I trust to think on their feet with values we share. And I care less about their ability to check off commitments on a to-do list.
And that's hard even still, because you get candidates who say they're going to do one thing and they don't. They get in office and they change, and the people that voted for them have certain expectations. And I'll tell you, locally, it's not rare when someone calls out even one of our city councilors. This is what you said you were going to do. This is what you support. Why aren't you speaking up? And so it's a bit of an anomaly to me still. Like, you can make as best decision, make your vote based on it as best of a decision as possible, and still end up with something very different in the end.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. We are joined by none other than Sally Hudson. And so, Sally, like, what else are you up to nowadays? I'm sorry, Max, if I'm jumping, but as you stated, you're a professor at UVA. We are approaching another election and whatnot. So I got to imagine like that there's a lot going on right now, especially with the university going through sort of, the turnover, and then, the potential turnover after the election. Like, what are some of the top agenda items that maybe the community will hear you be vocal on, or some things that you think the community should be watchful of as we, kind of close out this 2025?
That's a great question. I get back in the classroom next week. Our students just moved in, so I'll be back at UVA teaching statistics in the School of Public Policy. I'm really interested to see how the students are feeling about this time, especially because we are in an era where we're looking at a government that seems to be pretty hostile to the practice of statistics entirely, right? I mean, we're watching public servants lose their jobs left and right because they didn't produce the right numbers that somebody wanted to see. And so I think I will be interested to see what it means to engage with students. I mean, in the same way that you asked me, what's your level of faith in the election system? I wonder how they are feeling about their level of faith in science as an enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to be back and talking with them about that. I am really invested, if you're talking about community priorities, in making sure that as we head into 2026, that we support our General Assembly delegation in taking some really strong proposals for Board of Visitors reform to the General Assembly, because the group that oversees our local university has consequences for everybody in this community. That school is not just about the students who are enrolled there or the teachers who are teaching them. It's the biggest employer in the community.
Yeah.
It's the hospital that serves people all across the region. It's the engine of a lot of our local businesses for the innovations that they keep cranking out. And so I think that we have to be really mindful of what would it finally look like to get a real community voice on the Board of Visitors and not just have them be purely political appointees.
That is an awesome point. That's an awesome and great point. Like, how big would you say that this election is, this gubernatorial election is coming up, as far as its impact on the university?
Huge. It's everything, because the governor of Virginia appoints the boards of visitors that oversee the universities. And so the next governor is going to get to decide who are the leaders of this university. And right now, as you mentioned, we have vacancies at the top of all of the major positions in the university, in the hospital system. And so if you care about the future of the University of Virginia or any of our public colleges in the Commonwealth, then you got to care about who we elect for governor, because that is their call.
Yeah. And on so many levels, right? Like, the health department, right? Oversight, the Department of Education and all that kind of thing, because being the state university, in so many ways, as UVA goes, so does the state, and so you see a lot of folks follow suit, whether it's our relationship, with folks like VCU and whatever the case is. So definitely something to be mindful of.
I just want you educators to be super responsible with educating and helping to formulate good human beings. These are our future leaders. These are our future politicians. These, all those things. Make sure they care about people. Make sure that they are making decisions based on everyone's best interest. Make sure they're fair. Make sure the truth is still valuable to them. Like that. Those are the type of things that I think about each time school is in session, whether we're talking about our young children or college kids.
I think that's right. And I also think it is important for us as educators in UVA to help our students get connected to community, because we get a lot of folks who come in from out of town or from out of state. And I think, especially when the world seems crazy, helping them find their feet and their people in a place that they can care about keeps them grounded.
Yeah, that's spot on. Are you seeing any kind of like break or divide, like when it comes to, I guess, like maybe certain disciplines, majors and whatnot, like within the university settings now as well? Because one thing I think about is how we see how DEI came under attack, and I think we may have touched on this a little bit last time you were here, but I think what we've seen even more since we last spoke is that so now we're dealing with a generation of young people who has these good hearts that Max is talking about, and they want to go to a public university or what have you, or study liberal arts or whatever the case is, to be involved in communities, right? To sort of be, system changers, right? Game changers. But now they're looking at a world that's saying, no, we're going to keep everything status quo. You better fall in line, and that career that you wanted, may not even be here, when, like when you graduate. You know what I'm saying? It's like anything that's, like it's trying to help uplift people in what we thought was, to Max's point, being a good person. So I'm curious, you as a teacher, and maybe you've seen some things, as well as experience, like to where, like, how do we relay that sort of like insight to a young person that's determining their future?
Yeah. Right? It is challenging because a lot of students come into college, they understand that it costs a lot of money. Mm-hmm. They're very career focused, and they're trying to figure out how do they set themselves up for the job that's got to come after. It's something that I try to talk with them about, is that as I think about making sense of the world right now, some of the teachers who are still most impactful in my lives are the best English teachers I've ever had. Mm-hmm. I mean, high school English teachers who got you to read a book that taught you something about what it means to be human. And especially in times where it feels like there's really big battles between forces of something like good and something like evil. And so I think I would say, among my colleagues at the university, I have not felt disciplinary rifts. Some people saying, you got to go into STEM because you're never going to get anywhere with that English degree. That is not, I feel a great deal of solidarity among the faculty in understanding that we are educating whole humans. And in particular, if you're trying to make sense of this moment, this is when you need history. This is when you need literature, because a lot of what we're dealing with is different than the recent past, but has precedent elsewhere in history.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, I get a little bit frustrated, and I hope we can teach this here in Virginia, when people are talking about our current political moment and they want to go across an ocean and talk about what happened in Germany or in Poland. And we've got plenty of history right here in Virginia of what happened a century ago, when we completely restructured our political system in order to oppress some people and uplift others.
Yes.
And so we don't have to look to other countries to understand the chaos of this time. We've got plenty of local history right under our feet to talk about that. And so I think, if you're looking for something to hang on to in what feels like a chaotic time, go take a history class.
Spot on. Love it. Sally, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to you. And definitely looking forward, to your future endeavors, next endeavors, and all that good stuff. Like maybe be a candidate sometime. You're not discounting it completely, are you?
I don't know about that. I mean, never say never on anything, but there's an awful lot of hats to wear in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Need good people at all phases, and it's definitely a pleasure knowing you. Keep up the great work, and you always have a platform here because you always have great information, for our listeners to hear about and learn about. So thank you.
And you probably mentioned this, but tell us again, when can the community expect you to kind of be going before City Council to discuss the future of ranked choice voting locally?
I appreciate you circling back to that. I think that we will start having some public programming after this fall's election, because we know that folks kind of have their political energy squarely focused on the governor. But after early November, keep an eye out for more news. And in particular, once we get those new counselors in the seats, that's when they will have a chance to start making that. And my hope is that what they will do is set up a public process that folks can plug into with plenty of time and notice.
Gotcha.